Welcome to More on That, a podcast by More Media Group. I'm your host, Emily Moore. I'm joined by our Chief Operating Officer, Will Caves.
This is a podcast about work, life, and the places they intertwine. Each episode, we'll talk to a guest that is got a cool career or making great things happen, and we'll hear more about their stories and the things they got going on along the way.
And this week, we talked to Paige Bennett-Primke, which I was pronouncing Primke, learned as Primke. Paige is one of those people that you feel like has already lived like 5 different lives. She conducted research in Oman, has worked in tech in both Austin and San Francisco, and now lives in New Orleans with her family and is working on a task force with the mayor. So we get into all of that this week. It was a really great conversation. Excited for you guys to hear it. So here is More on That with Paige Bennett-Primke.
More on That is sponsored by Community Bank. These guys offer it all, from personal and business banking to financing and wealth management. They've got over 120 years of experience, and their home base is right here in Central Mississippi.
Yeah, we can't say enough good things about the team at Community Bank. We recently moved More Media's banking over to them, and everything has been so smooth. Every single person we've talked to has been helpful, kind, and easy to communicate with. I'm so thankful to have a bank I can reach out to and get personalized support from the same day.
They've got a ton of awesome services like their secure digital banking, and if you're dreaming of finally launching that business, there's a variety of business accounts you can choose from. Their experts will help you choose the right plan for you.
We love Community Bank, and we think you guys will too. Visit communitybank.net to learn more. That's communitybank.net, member FDIC. Paige, we are so excited to talk to you today. I have to tell you this. So Will and I drug Will into this podcast, and we both made lists of guests we wanted to talk to. You know, you're one of our very first guests, and you were on both of our lists. We both had you separately on our list.
I feel so honored.
You should. It's a big deal. We both were like, Paige, you have done so many cool things, and I'm so excited to be talking to you today. So thanks for making time to talk to us.
Yay. I'm very excited to talk with you both as well.
Okay. I feel like we do have to explain that we both have connections to you. Mm-hmm. So you and I are both from Picayune, and Will's wife, Whitney, is from Picayune. And so while I have probably known you longer, Will is now closer with you because you and Whitney are very good friends. And Will was actually the one to reach out to schedule because he had that. He was like, I can talk to Paige. I was like, okay, go ahead.
That's right. And I feel like people who know people from Picayune have a special bond with each other as well, because Picayune is truly a very unique place.
It is. But I do always say all roads lead to Picayune. I feel like I can always find, or I'll go somewhere, and this is probably, I mean, you've done a lot of traveling. I feel like I can always meet someone that knows someone from Picayune. And if they do, we can probably trace back to like, I know that person too, or I know their family, or like, who's their parents, who's their,
Absolutely. This is true.
So there's a lot to talk about today. You have done so many things. Let's go back to the beginning and just talk about where you went to school, what you studied, first career out of school. Let's start there.
Yes. So I went to the University of Southern Mississippi. Ironically, given where I ended up living, I was headed to Ole Miss, and at the very last minute was really afraid of living so far from home. I was just scared. And so I went to USM. Right.
That didn't last very long.
It did last long. I went to USM and I studied broadcast journalism because I wanted to be a news reporter since I was a small child. In my mind, it was my only career path. And so I studied broadcast journalism. I interned my senior year of college at WLOX, which is our ABC affiliate on the Gulf Coast. And I signed a contract with them out of college to produce. And so I had a very direct focus of what I thought my life was going to look like when I was graduating college.
And we can talk about this too, because, my first job out of college was also at WLOX. Isn't it such a special place? We talked about Picayune being such a special place. WLOX feels like, I've been in a few newsrooms, but none like WLOX. Like I loved it. I felt like the people there were so close. It was easy for me to jump in and find kind of a little community there. I felt very encouraged and supported. I loved it there. Did you have the same experience when you were there?
I did. And to the point where I will bring our children back to the newsroom. Both of my sons have since visited the newsroom and met my boss, Natalie Campen, who was the executive producer of WLOX.
I love Natalie so much.
Loved Natalie. A lot about what I learned as a manager, I learned from her. And I consistently go back to my job in the newsroom and pulling from experiences I've had. It was a very special place.
Did you work with Jeff Lawson?
Yes.
So
yes.
Jeff was there when I was there, and I started out actually just in the studio working cameras before I produced and reported. And I would do the cameras for Jeff. I was living with my parents, and my Nana lived in a little house behind them. And so I would go have coffee with my Nana every morning. And at some point, I told Jeff that. And so every evening when I'd be like adjusting the camera before the newscast started, he'd be like, Emily, how's Nana? And I'd be like, she's
I love
good.
It so much.
And he would say, what did we talk about today? And I'd tell him what Nana and I talked about that day. And years later, I mean, I was only at WLX for a year, and then I left. And that was over a decade ago. My Nana passed away a couple of years ago. I had not talked to Jeff in years, but he was my Facebook friend, and I had posted that my Nana had passed away. He came to her funeral in Picayune. He and his wife showed up at her funeral.
Precious.
I'm like tearing, like I cried. I did not cry at the funeral except for when I saw Jeff Lawson, because like, I just want to be that kind of person. Like, what an act of just pure kindness just to show up. And he said, he was like, I just feel like every day I felt like I knew Nana. Every day I heard about her, and I got to hear about her life and her experiences that she shared with you. And so I felt like I needed to come honor her. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like
that is precious. I love that. He is a very, very special person.
I know.
And you don't realize how special and unique that is until you go into other workplaces and you realize that that's not quite like that everywhere else.
Right. Especially because it was your first job. So you're like, okay, I can handle this. Okay.
Totally.
Did you report or produce you produced the whole time?
So I produced and I'd started reporting when I ended up leaving WLOX. And I had been there for about 2 years and had started to think about what's going to happen after LOX. I came in at a really interesting time. I had entered right after Hurricane Katrina. And so those entire 2 years were full of Katrina stories. Every story we produced was a Katrina story. And it was 2005, 2006, in that time period where people were literally coming to the lobby of the station to ask for help. Or they would come to the lobby of the station and say, my FEMA trailer is flooding. What do I do? And as the youngest, and when I was an intern especially, I was the one that would sit and spend a lot of time in the lobby talking to them. And it was a wonderful experience. But after 2 years of constant Katrina reporting, I felt like I was ready to make a change.
So where did you go from WLOX?
Ironically, I did not just go down the street like my high school self would have thought, being so afraid to go to Ole Miss. I had this opportunity to move to a very small country in the Middle East called Oman. And it seems like a very random step in my journey, but I always wanted to be a news reporter. And I had always had foreign correspondency in my head. So somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought I would end up in the Middle East at some point.
Okay.
I didn't go over with the news, though. I had this opportunity to go over to Oman for a 2-year stint to do what is essentially field research, what we would call ethnography. It was incredibly random in a lot of ways, but I was young. I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. I was looking for my next adventure. I thought, okay, I can either go to another newsroom or I can take this. I'll probably not have an opportunity to do this again and run with it. I know my mother specifically said the day I told her that that's where I wanted to go, she said, can you not just go to Hawaii? And
same thing.
You just, sow your wild oats in Hawaii. But
easier for her to come visit.
Right. It's also important. I feel like it's important to pause and since you've mentioned your parents, who are Mr. and Mrs. Claus in the Picayune Christmas Parade.
My children do think that they're VIPs so that they can say, if you're not behaving, I will text Santa. And speaking of my mother, when I was in news, Jeff had to report on a story in Picayune. And I remember my mother came to hit their van and brought them pot pies. And Jeff Lawson never forgot that. And so my parents, precious Picayune people, were incredibly nervous about me doing this. But I had also spent the summer of my college year, before my senior year of college, in Thailand. And I had just gotten the bug. I knew that I needed to leave the nest. off I went to Oman, and I spent 2.5 years there. And it was life-changing in many ways. I think as a young single woman, it was not the easiest place to be. I got a lot of questions about why I wasn't married at the old age of 24. And I had to do a lot of things that the culture was built for if you had a male family figure or a husband to do them for you. And so since I didn't, and I was in a lot of situations where I had a lot of eyes on me. But I learned that lesson of you're just going to have to push through. You're just going to have to move forward, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but you're going to have to do it. And that is most definitely a lesson I have taken on into the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I will say it was an incredible experience to the point where my husband and I are planning a trip back there in a couple of years with the kids.
Yeah.
I want to show them where I developed so much of who I am now. And I have some dear friends who came to our wedding in New Orleans, some dear Omani friends, and would love to go visit them. And
that's what I wanted to ask. Like, did you make friends there? Did you have people?
I did. What was so fun about it too is that a large contingent of my friends that I made were these young women who were the first generation of women to enter the workforce in Oman. And at that point, a lot of the jobs open to women were in more supportive roles, but nonetheless, it was outside of the house. And a couple of friends I've made did not get married and have not yet gotten married, which is highly, highly unusual. One of my friends turned down multiple marriage proposals. And another one of my friends just finished getting her PhD. I mean, these were women in Oman who were really at the forefront of showing the rest of the country what women could do.
After Oman, though, I mean, you didn't just come right back home. I mean, you did come back to the United States, but not to Picayune. So you went to Austin.
I did. You know, when I came back from Oman, I was going through what I think a lot of us can relate to as that quarter life crisis, where you're not really sure if the career that you're in is the one you want to be in. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do next. I toyed with the idea of law school, and the University of Texas has a good international law program. There were a few friends of mine from Picayune who were at UT in grad school, and they loved it. And so I really came home to Picayune and looked at my mom and said, I think I'm going to move to Austin. It was just a random choice. I said, you know, my friends like it. I could think about going to law school there. I had no job there and didn't know how I was going to get a job there. But I drove with my MapQuest printouts from Picayune.
As we did, like
Austin.
Pirates at sea. That's how we did it.
Pirates at sea. Yeah. Yeah. And that, I think there are so many moments, you know, we've talked about that changed the course of our lives, and we can see the road that has gotten us to where we are today. And for most of us, it's winding, and that's what's made it so beautiful and rich. And that was another point where it is this curve in my path. I moved to Austin, was looking for a job, and this woman who worked at Dell, the Dell computer company that we know, interviewed me. And she is, to this day, one of my, another person who I really admire and have pulled a lot of my leadership experience from. She was a wonderful manager, and she took a chance on me. And she said something that really stuck with me. You know, she interviewed me. I had no qualifications to work for a tech company.
Did you apply?
I randomly applied. I saw the job and I was like, this is interesting. I need a job.
Yeah.
Dell seems like a big enough company where maybe I could find a role there. And it paid.
You could do worse.
I could do worse. So I'm going to just send my resume, really not expecting to hear anything. And I get this call from my manager. Her name was Carrie Palin, is Carrie Palin. She's now the CMO of Cisco. And at the time, when she interviewed me, she told me, and what stuck with me is that she said, I had this gut feeling. And even though you didn't have experience on your resume that specifically correlated to the role that you were going to do, I felt like if you could live in Oman and do these other things, you can learn this job.
Okay, Will and I have talked about this, that is so important. I've had to hire several employees. Since Will's joined, we've hired one full-time, but also a part-time. Yeah. And to me, it is so much more important to find the right person. Because if you find a person that is adaptable, a quick learner, a hard worker, like if you find a person with the right skills, they can kind of adapt to the role, which it sounds like is what she saw in you. Like she was like, okay, this is a person that I want on my team. So I'm pulling her in and I'm going to make her a part of this.
She absolutely did. And she was my advocate. She was my first advocate. And she taught me how important it is to find advocates wherever you are working. And I learned a lot at Dell. I worked with people who were very much my senior in age and experience, but it was my first exposure to tech. And my first exposure to what it meant to really have to collaborate with people, have to communicate really clearly with people about these budgets. In Oman, I really worked by myself in a lot of ways. And this was the first time that I had to really step up and be a team leader. And I learned a ton from that job. I had my BlackBerry because I thought that was what all corporate ladies had. I would click my heels into Round Rock, Texas, into the Dell headquarters. And it just was a really formative time in my life. I noticed that there was a team seated next to me where I was in marketing, and they were always doing these really fun projects like Dell was changing the color of their laptops, and they were doing these studies with customers on how they interpreted and perceived these different colors.
It was such a big deal. What color Dell?
Yeah, I remember.
The color Dell you had said a lot. I had yellow, which says a lot about me.
And it is. It's like a personality test.
Yeah,
and
it
and
did.
the color
Everybody
choice
had a
that you
different
have.
color. Yeah, and you needed to know.
You needed to know. And
Will's was gray, he said.
I believe mine was as well.
But that's so serious. You're so serious.
We were such serious corporate people.
You had your BlackBerry and your gray Dell, and that was all you needed.
True. I thought that was such an interesting job to have. And it was this interesting mixture of psychology and communication. They were interviewing these people, they were listening to them, and I thought, I've done that. I learned how to interview in news. I spent 2.5 years sitting in the majlises, the living rooms of Omani women, listening to their stories. I am always interested in what makes people tick and why they do the things they do. This is a really interesting role. It was called user research. And at the time, there weren't a lot of people saying that term, user research, but it fascinated me. And that is where the door opened to what I do today.
From there, you ended up in San Francisco. How did we jump there?
Yeah, I never thought San Francisco would be on my radar, to be honest with you. When I moved to Austin, I loved it. It was like it was a young person's Mecca at the time. And I was eating all the breakfast tacos I could find, and life was good. I had a really good friend who was working for this startup called Gowalla, which was like Foursquare, if you remember Foursquare back in the day.
Yeah, back when we just put our location up for anyone to find. In real time. Here I am. Come get me.
Yes. I would check in everywhere. There wasn't a location that was safe from me checking in to it. And she worked with this guy that I was seated next to at a birthday dinner. He was the most interesting person. He was the software engineer at Gowalla, and he was German, but he had all this like Southern cultural knowledge. Like he drove this old 1980 pickup truck. He listened to country music. I thought, how did you get to be who you are? And it turned out that he had come over in a study abroad program in high school, and they had put him in Union, South Carolina, which is a one stoplight town, village. And he loved it, ended up going to undergrad and grad school at University of South Carolina, and had moved from there to do some startups in Boston, and had just moved to Austin. So we started talking. We were friends for a little while and we started dating. And I, fresh off of the fields of Oman, was a horrible dater. What was so interesting about that is when we first started dating, Gowalla, their startup, was being acquired by Facebook. And it was not yet public. And this was in 2012. So this is still early Facebook days. But I knew it was happening because of my good friend. And we went on a date to the movies when the news broke that it had been acquired by Facebook. And as we're leaving the movie theater, his phone is blowing up. Like, oh my gosh, you're going to Facebook. And this was in the Social Network was about to come out in movie theaters. Sean Parker was one of the investors in Gowalla. And so we were very close to how real that movie was to reality or not. And I knew that our lives were about to change. I took a risk in some ways of moving out to San Francisco, but I was still with Dell at the time and it was remote. And we knew we wanted to pursue something seriously. And so I moved out to San Francisco. This was an interesting experience because that time in tech was probably tech's heyday of, if you watch the show Silicon Valley, that's sort of when this is taking place, this 2011 to 2015, 16, 17 timeframe.
Okay, I have a dumb question about that. So Silicon Valley is not San Francisco. It's just, it is a real place.
It is a real place. So think of it like San Francisco's the city and Silicon Valley. And if anybody is listening from Silicon Valley who is from New Orleans, I apologize right now about this, but Silicon Valley is like Metairie. It's like, it's outside of the city. And it's where a lot of the big tech companies were at. Until about 2015, most tech companies weren't in San Francisco. Now, a lot of tech companies have offices also in San Francisco. And so at the time, we moved to San Francisco, but Facebook had these charter buses that they would bring into the city and all the employees would get on them and they would drive down to Palo Alto. It was the hot seat of tech, which was a shock to me because when I moved from Austin, Austin was touted as this up and coming tech city and it was being compared to San Francisco. I was expecting them to be the same and they weren't at all. And I went through a shaky couple of years really trying to find my footing in San Francisco. I think you both can probably relate to this. For many people I worked with, I was the first Mississippian that they had ever come in contact with.
Oh, I'm shocked.
And there was sometimes they would be curious. Sometimes you could see the look in their eyes, like they are super surprised that I am articulating words. Right. And it was just a very different environment, especially in that time. You would meet people and you were about 2 seconds into meeting them and they would tell you what app they built, how much money they've raised, et cetera. The measure for success at that time was you needed to make your first million by 30 or you weren't successful. And it was an incredibly intense environment to walk into. Facebook eventually went public on the market after Torben started there, and that changed a lot of things as well. And the pressure to succeed, to build the next successful thing, was just incredibly present with everyone. One of the drastic differences I noticed was the lack of community, and everyone is very much heads down trying to build their next thing. And so it was a big learning curve for me. When we moved there, I sort of thought, okay, we'll be here for 2 years and then we'll go on to our next thing. I don't want to live here forever. Well, we ended up getting married, having 2 children at the time in San Francisco. And at one point thought we would be there until they graduated high school. So things changed.
The people that you were with and around at that time were building the internet as people interact with it. It's
what
kind
I
of
was
wild.
going to ask. Did you realize, obviously Facebook was already a big deal when that happened.
Sure.
But in my head, it's like the mothership, it's like, did you realize that at the time, did you and Torben realize how big of a deal, like what was happening was?
We did not. When Torben went to work for Facebook, my parents did say that they were hoping that he would get health care. And they were hoping he wasn't working in a garage somewhere.
From this little startup that he was going to work for.
At the time, the Facebook campus was already pretty nice. So I definitely did not realize how just how monumental of a shift it was going through.
Yeah.
But we did not realize that our lives were going to change at that point at all. And it was a really neat time to be there because we also got to work with some people who were responsible for building some of the other apps that are so influential to this day. When Torben left Facebook, he decided to join one of Twitter co-founders. His name is Biz Stone, Biz's startup. And it was just like 5 people. And Biz was like, come join me. At the time, I was thinking about where I wanted my next role to be. And Biz needed an executive assistant, and me with no executive assistant experience said, I can totally do this. I can be your EA. So for a while, it was Biz Stone's EA, and that was incredibly insightful. He was one of the founders of Twitter, along with Jack Dorsey and Ev Williams. And so it was very interesting to get into his brain and really see the brain of a founder up close. And they are all very eccentric and have their own quirks. And it also opened the door to a role that really catapulted me into what I do now, which was at one of Ed Williams, who co-founded Twitter, his startup called Medium. Medium is a publication website. You can still go to it to this day. And they had a role opened. Once again, I wasn't necessarily qualified for it, but I loved the website. It really spoke to my journalist days. I loved that it was all about getting people to write stories and doing so in a beautiful way. And I applied to that job knowing I wasn't qualified for it and really just hoping that they would give me a chance to go in and talk to them. And that example is one that I have shared with other people who are more junior in their careers, where I've said, one of the things that women tend to not do very well is we want to wait until all the boxes are checked on our resume before we feel like we're able to step into a role. Men are not as likely to do that. And we need to do that more often. We need to say, hey, listen, I might not check every box, but I know I can do this role, and just totally go out right. And have that risk. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like such a confidence thing is what it boils down to, is like, but I don't know that there's enough boxes that get checked that we don't feel that way. I think it's,
I don't think there is.
It's pushing past that regardless, because I just don't know that you get to a point where as a woman, you don't feel, I don't know, maybe you do, but I'm not. I feel I'm always still insecure. And I own this company, and I'm still very insecure about the things I'm doing for work, and I don't have a boss to report to. I just don't know that you get to a point. I think it's pushing past that, which it seems like you've always done from the beginning.
It really is. And it's about, like you said, it's about confidence and just being confident that, okay, I know I might not have this experience, but I think I could do it.
Yeah, I would still be good at this. Yeah. Like knowing that you'd be good on the team. Yeah. One thing I really want to talk about is you've had these amazing, you've hopped around a lot in your career, and you've had all these amazing roles, as we've talked about. You've worked in tech, and I know you jumped around some more in tech in San Francisco. But you now live in New Orleans, and you moved home closer to home. So you moved to New Orleans with your family. So I want to kind of talk about what brought that about, and I feel like it ties into, but I want to get into some of your transition to motherhood, because you've had this amazing, successful career, but you're also an amazing mom. And I want to kind of talk about how those two things go together.
Yeah. During COVID, we realized, like so many people did, that we were really isolated in San Francisco without any family. And I had just had my second son. He was just 2 months old when everything shut down. And we realized that we needed more support. And so we got in the car and drove from San Francisco to Picayune to stay with my family for a few months. And at one point we had to go back to San Francisco, but that really put a seed in our mind about the possibility of living here. Our offices had both gone remote. That was never a possibility in our minds before COVID. So we thought we were married to San Francisco or New York. And those are the only two places we would be able to live if we wanted to stay in that industry. And suddenly everything had changed. And so when we started thinking about moving to New Orleans, it just seemed like a good thing to take a chance on. I was nervous because, again, my husband is German and New Orleans is a very unique place. And he is very much passionate about his job. Like he's one of those people that codes for fun. And the pace of life in New Orleans is much slower. People are just enjoying life. And I wondered if that was going to be interesting for him or if it would feel kind of crazy. So when we moved down here, I thought, all right, let's see what would happen. In stark contrast to our experience in San Francisco, we were here for less than a day and we had met half of our neighbors on our block.
Of course.
And it just so happened that our neighbors also had children our children's age. They also went to the same school. Some went to the same school. It was just this sudden instant community.
Yeah.
And people are definitely enjoying living first, and work tends to come secondary. Moving back to the South was a little bit of a cultural adjustment because it had been so long since I'd lived there. But it's been a really wonderful experience, both by being closer to my family and also by getting this breath of fresh air about what life is supposed to be about and the pace that life can be. Just being able to enjoy things without this constant pressure of you've got to build the next thing, you've got to launch the next thing, you've got to get funding for the next thing. It's been really nice. And so at this point, I feel more at home here now than in the 3.5 years we've been here than I did in the 12 years I lived in San Francisco.
Whenever you were talking about the pace of things in San Francisco and just how there was so much pressure there, because you didn't have kids yet. And I wonder, like, how would you have even managed that as a mom with kids in school and having that pressure on you? I mean, do you think about that a lot? Like, do you wonder if you would even still be there had COVID not happened?
I do. When we left, my oldest was 3 and my youngest was a baby. And so I had just started getting into that. And when we were in the office, there were several times in which I would be on my way home in the evening and I would need to turn around and stay at the office because there was an impromptu whiteboard session or a meeting that we were doing. And so luckily at that time we had a nanny who was flexible, but had that not been the case, it would have been particularly challenging. And I already felt the pressure of being one of the only moms, if not the only mom on my team, for example. Yeah. And so I do wonder about that. Yeah. I think in a lot of my experience in tech, I've either been one of few women or one of few or the only mother in the room. And so you do feel this pressure on top of you of, I can't let anybody see that my role as a mother is impacting and influencing my role as this person in this company.
Yeah. I just told Will, this is one of my favorite things to talk about is like how motherhood and career can overlap and what it's like trying to be successful at both and having a passion for both. Like, I love my career. I love what I do for work, but I also love being a mom, but I want to be fully present at both. And it's so hard. But I feel like, and I want to hear your opinion on it. I feel like COVID almost made it helped us realize, like, your personal life, you cannot just pretend it's not there when you're at work. And it's made it more flexible, like working remote is so normal now, but also like being able to leave, if your kid's sick, stay home with your kid. That feels so much more acceptable since COVID. Do you feel that way?
I think it is. And I've also changed my stance on this over the years. And so, whereas a few years ago, I was very much trying to, I can't let them see that motherhood is affecting me. Now I am very transparent. And part of that is because I also want to be an advocate for my team. My team are often in the world of user research in tech, it can be a heavily, a woman heavy field. And so oftentimes you do have people on your team who might be the only caregivers are women in the org. And so at this point in my career, I really changed my mindset to wanting to be an advocate for them. And so, for example, it's very common for you to have offsites that your company is planning or your org is planning, and they can come last minute. We had one that was being planned rather last minute in early December. And what is December for parents? It's the craziest month there is. And so I knew as a leader, I needed to speak up because the men in the room might not notice it if they are not the primary caregiver. But I needed to voice that, hey, listen, there are people on the team that cannot drop things at the drop of a hat to plan this offsite. There are Christmas pageants, there are concerts, there are lots of things going on right now.
There's a dress-up day every single day.
Yes, and people cannot make that trip. And so if they can't travel, how can we make sure that their voice is heard in the room? Because I don't want there to be no voices from the mothers in the room because they weren't able to attend.
Yeah.
And so as a leader now, I'm really very transparent about this because especially in the industry that my company is in, which is banking and finance, if you don't voice it, no one else is going to be thinking about it or will voice it.
Yeah.
And so I do try to really make sure that I'm an advocate for the mothers in my company and on my team.
That's the word I was going to say. I think it's so beautiful that early in your story, you talked about all the people you had that advocated for you. And then now to see like you're such a successful woman who advocates for other women and other moms in the workplace. And I just think it's cool how it's gone, it's come full circle. It's cool to hear that.
Yeah,
you did. I don't know if you realized you were describing yourself advocating until the end there, but like you literally, like the story started with you talking about the advocates you had, and now like you are the advocate, which is really cool. Because you're in the position to be there. Okay, so what are you doing now, Paige?
So one thing that we're doing is very much preparing for Mardi Gras in a couple of weeks.
Of course, top priority.
Which is most important. I kid, but it's really always interesting working for companies based out of California during Mardi Gras season. And you have
Whitney
to say,
and Lily
listen,
going this year?
They went last year.
Whitney
they
and Lily coming?
So, yeah,
they did.
Mardi Gras is not my thing. So, I mean, I like it.
Don't offend
I like
her.
it. I like it. It's just a lot. And so
it is a lot, Will.
I'll look at pictures.
It is a marathon. I'll tell you what. And we live a block off the parade route. So it is a lot. But in all honesty, one thing that I'm doing right now is starting to work with other companies, other design teams, other user research teams in thinking about the world of AI, because it is all a buzz and part of almost every tech company's strategic plans right now. What are we going to do with AI? And one of the things I have done at a firm is think about how we implement AI in a responsible way and how we measure for its success. And so I have, that's what I'm currently doing after deciding that I think that there's a lot of dialogue we need to have around the responsible balance between AI and the skills that we ourselves bring to our companies and to our roles. And so that's what I'm doing right now. There's a lot to talk about there, but it is a really, really interesting time. I feel a little bit like it's 2012 again.
Yeah.
Where it's just, you feel like you are on top of this roller coaster and it's about to get interesting.
That's a good analogy. It's like, yeah, it feels like there's still so much unknown and so much possibility, and it is a little scary. And
it's
I mean, in marketing,
scary.
in what we do, it is like, it does feel like there's a lot of AI taking over a lot of the services that we offer. And it's something we talk about a lot, is how can we work with it instead of against it, or feel like we're competing with it? Like, how do we use it to make us better instead of feel like we're competing against it all the time? And we don't know the answer yet, but that's a conversation that we have a lot. Okay, can I ask about your work with the mayor of New Orleans? Can we talk about that? Okay, so are you friends with her? I follow you on Instagram. When she was campaigning, I saw you posting a lot. But you're on a task force now, right?
Yes.
You tell us. You just tell us. Tell us what's going on.
What is so fun about the mayor is she used to be a news reporter.
Oh.
And so she was at WDSU, which is our NBC affiliate here in New Orleans. And I used to watch her on the news. My mother loved her on the news. And when she started becoming involved heavily with city council, and there started to be rumors that she would run for mayor, I thought, you know what? A former journalist is an excellent candidate because they know the ins and outs of the city. They were right there trying to dig through it as they're reporting these stories. And so when she announced that she was running for mayor, I knew I had to get involved. And I immediately reached out and said, let me get involved. I want to host a meet and greet in my neighborhood. I want to make sure that we can do what we can to make sure that you're successful. She also had a lot of wonderful plans for the city. And so early on, one of the things that I chatted with her about was my desire to stay in New Orleans and not have to leave it because we can't be successful in tech here. My husband, if he wants to start his next startup, what would it look like to be able to have that startup here in New Orleans and not have to go back to Sand Hill Road for VC funding? What would it look like to be able to hire the talent out of Tulane or Loyola and not have to pull from or go back to San Francisco?
Yeah.
And obviously I have a selfish motive because my children are thriving here, but that's what I want to do. And so I was privileged to serve on a task force to help identify what's the first 100-day wins that Helena is going to make in the world of tech here, about keeping talent here, bringing talent here. What does that look like? I have really enjoyed being able to speak and give my perspective of somebody from Picayune who did have to leave to be successful and now wants to come back and really build a life here and stay here, and what we need in order to make that happen. So that's been just a really cool experience.
It's so cool that you've only been back a few years and you're already getting to do such important work there, invest in your city. And, I just think it's cool that it's not like you've been there for decades. You just got back and you're already jumping right in and working on it. And I think it's awesome.
I tell you what, we mothers, we love to have about 50 things on our plates at all times.
You can't get bored.
No.
You can't get bored. Right.
As we wrap up, I want to talk to you a little bit about something we try to do with all of our guests, which is your more on that. And it's kind of like your thing, something you secretly love getting asked about, something you hoped we'd talk about, something that, you're just dying to tell everybody, or, not necessarily a secret or anything, just something fun that you want to talk about. It can be funny, serious, whatever you'd like.
Fun fact, I'm a trained hostage negotiator. Okay. I can negotiate you if you were a hostage. I can also help you negotiate yourself out of being in a hostage situation. This is this type of knowledge that is in my head all the time, and I don't know what to do with it. I joke that sometimes I use it with my toddler.
But I was going to say, use it on these kids.
That's right.
I spent 3 years in the Middle East really ready to put it to use. And so I just carry it with me, trained hostage negotiator. Very interesting tidbit there.
I feel like those skills, it would come in handy in really any argument, right? I mean, isn't it all about de-escalating? I mean, I feel like
de-escalating.
There's plenty of opportunity for that in 2026,
right. Noticing details, yes. Being very observant. All of these things you can use in your everyday life. So everybody, you're now a trained hostage negotiator. So congratulations.
I feel like I need it with my 4-year-old. You said your toddler, but the 4-year-old's the one I feel like that we need it the most.
That is true. That is very true.
This episode is sponsored by Fuse.cloud. Fuse.cloud delivers technology solutions to thousands of businesses across the country. We've used them for internet at our office for years, and we couldn't be happier. Their customer service is seriously top-notch.
Yeah, we don't often have issues, but whenever we do, they're always immediately ready to jump in and help. We love these guys so much that we even named our password after one of their team members for a while.
Yeah, Ben is the bomb.
And our clients were always so confused, who's Ben?
And while you aren't required to reference their team in your password, you should look into using Fuse.cloud for your business and internet needs.
They also offer other services like voice and managed IT, and they're based right here at home in Jackson, Mississippi.
Check them out online at Fuse.cloud. That's FUSE.CLOUD.
We do have a few rapid fire questions. We'll do real quick, and we'll just try to do like quick answers.
If you could meet one celebrity, who would it be? You've met so many, probably. So
Billy Idol.
Okay, I love that. What country do you most want to visit? You've been to a lot, so is there one that you haven't been to that you'd like to visit?
I would love to go to the Faroe Islands.
Okay.
I don't even know where that is.
Say more. More on that,
More
please.
on that.
Yeah. What?
I was good friends with some people from there who lived in Oman, and it's this beautiful little country over by Denmark. It looks like Frozen come to life.
Okay, maybe that's my answer to that question now. Then
I failed that. I was thinking that's not where I thought it was when you said that.
I pictured tropical.
I was thinking like French Polynesia somewhere down there.
Right.
It's a little bit different. What was your dream job as a kid? I think you may have said. It might have been news related.
I also wanted to be a host of the Home Shopping Network.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's a good one. This is funny because somebody in your circle probably helped write some of this code. Do you guys have your own Netflix account or do you share?
We have our own Netflix account. We do share it with people, and we do know some people who do write the code at Netflix.
She's probably she's grandfathered in. So yeah,
they get a complimentary one for life.
Her account number is 001. What's one thing you keep meaning to do but can never get to?
Oh my goodness! Organize the Legos that my children have. They have 5 billion Legos.
I can attest that they do have a lot of Legos. Yeah, but it's fun. It's like I would say it's not disorganized. It breeds creativity.
It's a lot of Legos.
There's a lot of Legos.
A lot of Legos.
What is you said we did this one already. What is alternate universe you doing right now? Somewhere out in the multiverse, what is the other Paige
alternate
doing?
Universe me is living with my family in like the off-grid jungles of Thailand.
Okay.
I love it.
I love that.
Did you read The Midnight Library?
Oh,
that's
but now I need to put it on my
Will and I have
list.
talked about it. She kind of explores different versions of reality where she pursued different careers and different paths in life. And so that's what Will and I have talked about, our alternate universe selves because of Midnight Library. You should check it out.
This isn't so much rapid fire, but how can people follow you on social media? How can people keep track of what you're doing and what's next for you in New Orleans and Mardi Gras? See all of your Mardi Gras content.
So people can definitely follow me on Instagram. I'm at Paige B. I also am a contributor to New Orleans Moms. So I write articles there and do some funny stuff with New Orleans Moms. And LinkedIn, Paige Bennett, if you need some career advice because you're interested in user research or product design, I am super happy to chat. There would bring me so much joy to work with other people from Mississippi.
Yeah.
So reach out to me so I can have some fellow Mississippians in my tech world.
Well, that is so generous. And again, going back to, I just think it's cool that you have so much gratitude for the people who have poured into you. And now being as successful as you are turning around and pouring into others. And I think it's amazing. It's a great trait to have. And we are also thankful for you being generous with your time to talk to us today. But like I said, we were both so excited. It's just fun to have someone who we both have connections to through different, I don't know. It was exciting. We were both like, Paige would just be cool to talk to. You've just done so much. So we really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for listening to More on That. You can check us out on Instagram at More Media Group or online at themoremediagroup.com. That's more with 2 O's.
And to listen to more episodes, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. This may be obvious, but More on That is sponsored in part by our company, More Media Group. We're a full-service marketing and public relations agency located in Jackson, Mississippi. We offer help with public relations, advertising, social media, branding, and website design.
Yeah, if it falls under the marketing umbrella, we can help. Our team has worked with clients across several industries, including tourism, healthcare, economic development, higher ed, food and beverage, and more.
If you think we'd be a good fit, check us out at themoremediagroup.com. That's more with 2 O's. Before we go, we want to give one more thank you to our presenting sponsor, Community Bank. Whether you're looking for personal or business banking, Community Bank is the place to go.
They're helpful, responsive, and always updating their services to provide the very best banking options to their customers. Visit communitybank.net to learn more. Member FDIC.